I got a phone call the other day, and when I answered the phone, this lady said, "Kirk?" I said, "Yeah." She went, "Oh, it feels like fate that I've got hold of you." She went on to tell me that she's been trying to get hold of a plasterer to do a job for her for weeks on end, but she keeps getting let down because it's a little job. She told me that she'd been recommended my name by a couple of people, but they didn't have my phone number. She said, "So I've had it in my mind to get hold of you somehow, to find hold of you." She said, "And I'm driving back from the hospital and I'm in a rush to get home because her husband's housebound." She said, "And on my way home I get stuck in a little traffic jam, which is quite frustrating." She said, "But I look to the right and there's your van right next to me on the side of the road with your name and number in big shiny letters." So she took my number down and decided to call me the minute she got in. What the situation is, her husband is receiving palliative care at home. And whilst he's housebound, the nurses that go round to see him, they need a little key safe to let themselves in and an outside light so they can see what they're doing. They've had the outside light installed and they just needed somebody to come round and patch up the little bit of chase work that was left. She said it's not really a big job or a big issue, but with what's going on, I feel like just these little things are really getting me down when I can't get them sorted and fixed. So I said, "Look, don't worry about it. I'll be straight round and we'll get it sorted." So this is what we did the next day. Okay, so this is the job. We've got to patch this up, fix this little hole in the ceiling here, fix this hole, and come in. There's another little bit here. And this here with this little hole here. We've got a little bit of SBR here. For patching, I use Plasterer's Blend Clear SBR. I'm just going to seal these bits up now ready so they're ready to go when we get back. So what I've done is, because we're going to blend in here, rather than just doing a little bit round each, I've just sealed the whole ceiling up to there. We'll patch that up and them up and we can blend in anywhere. You always want to make sure whenever you're going to blend in with plaster that your sealer comes past it. So if I want to feather in around there, I want my sealer to be that big, you know. So the whole thing is done up to there. I haven't got to worry about going past the edge of it then, you know. What happens is when you're feathering in plaster, if you feather in past where you've glued, that's when it starts to show off. When the painter comes along and rolls his paint on and all the plaster flakes off, that's why, because you've gone past where it's been sealed. It's mixed now, it's ready. It's about the thickness of ice cream, so we'll go and pop that in these chases. I wanted to put the little circles back in the hole. Come on, I'll show you what I mean. Come with me a sec. Usually, I try and get all the plasterboarding done first before we do any filling out, which means putting these little circles back in here and screwing them back in. Now this one we've got some timber to fix to, this one we haven't. So the ones that we haven't, we'll put a little bit of wood behind there and screw it up and fix it up. I haven't got any wood, but I have got this, which is for suspended ceilings, top hat. So we'll just put a piece of this in there. You could use a bit of roof band. Now the interesting thing is, my screw gun is on the other job where we're nipping off to in a minute. We're just flying in and out. A couple of little visits to get this done today for this lady, so we'll do what we can filling out and we'll screw this up when we get back. I didn't have any hard wall or bonding on the van, so we're having to use dry wallboard adhesive. I'm just making sure I squidge it in and work it in up behind there to the other bit of plaster. There is plaster in there. I'm just making sure that we make a good bond to it. So I'm trying to get this job done with what I've got on the back of my van for this lady. Now, dry wallboard adhesive, it's not designed for this, but it'll work just perfect. Ultimately, it just doesn't spread as nice or go as far as hard wall or bonding coat. Okay, that's everything sealed, chase filled, in and around the socket nice and neat. No bits sticking over. These are going to be put in when we get back, when I've got my screw gun, and that's that one filled. So that's it now. That's going to set. Whilst that's setting, we're going to shoot it off. rattling round too easy up there. So it's hard trying to pull it down while sending screws through it. A bit of timber would have been easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this little loop over the back of this instead, so I can pull it down. Right, there we go. The problem was someone's double boarded the ceiling, and me trying to get my hand up through that hole to hold that piece of top hat still while I was putting screws into it was difficult, so a little bit of scrim saved the day. Because this is a little patch, I'm going to use plaster accelerator. The last thing I want is to be sat here for 3 hours waiting for these little patches to set. Oh, and if you didn't know, the scratcher is the best tool to use to mix little amounts fast. When I'm doing little bits like this, I'm only loading up certain parts of the trowel. For instance, I'm only putting plaster on the front end of the trowel when I'm going up and down, so I don't get it all over the door frame. And if a little bit spills over, just wipe it off as you go. The aim of the game is to try and keep it clean as you're working. Now, anywhere where there is a joint in plasterboard needs scrimming. So if you notice a scrim that section there, this little bit wasn't scrimmed, and neither was this bit. That's because the scrims were sliding round. So now we've got a little bit of plaster on. Now we can bed the screw into the plaster and it won't move. Right, because of the accelerator, this stuff is starting to firm up a little bit. So now, I know it'll be firming up on the wall and the ceiling. Add a little bit of water. I'm going to knock this up and it's going to set a little bit quicker, but also make it nicer to work with. I'm being careful not to leave any big ridges where I'm blending into the other plaster. Now, some guys struggle with blending in, but if you take your time and work across the blend and use plenty of water when you're troweling up, you can get it perfect. I can get in most places with my trowel, but in little tight spots, I like to use a plasterer's small tool. I can fit my trowel in there, but I have to be careful because those wires are still live. Okay, you'll be impressed how long this takes now. So the time is 24 minutes past 11 and we're just about to start troweling up. So the accelerator, this is where it comes in useful now. 24 minutes past 11. Let's see how long it takes before this is finished. Now, I should have checked the time before I started, but it's took me about 15 minutes to give it 2 coats of plaster. So just add 15 minutes onto this process and then you'll have the overall time. Notice I'm using lots of water when I'm blending in. I keep me brush in my hand and I always work across the blend. That way it feathers in lovely. If you work to the blend, then you get a little bump or a ridge. And whatever you do, don't use a flexi trowel for blending in. It feels lovely and the blend looks perfect, but it doesn't get it flat. So once it's painted and you look across it, where you've blended in really stands out. Okay, so always use a proper trowel for blending in. You'll see it'll start going dark in little patches and a bit bubbly and what have you. It'll come down lovely. Just Make sure that little section there is flat. I'm hitting it both ways. There we go. Nearly done now. Smooth as baby's bum. Do you remember how we wet up the second coat? So that means now the first coat and the second coat are going to set at slightly different times, and that's absolutely normal. But what happens is, as the first coat sets, it starts to go dark, and the second coat's still light. So as your plaster starts to set, it looks like it's two-tone, like two different colours. Also, what you'll notice is when you've wet the plaster and troweled it around, that's been slightly diluted and it'll dry a lighter colour. So all these different colours may look like marks, but ultimately it'll be nice and smooth. That's it. Polished. Lovely and polished. All nice and smooth. It is 11:38 and the job's done. That's it. So now, with everything that's going on with these guys in a minute, it's a pleasure on my part to be able to drop things and come and fix this for them instantly, just to take a little bit of pressure off them, you know. And ultimately, I'm not going to charge them for this. I'll just do it for free. Now, it's not a case of these guys need the money. It's just, if they feel that there's people looking out for them and there's people that have got a heart, it might make today just a little bit nicer for them, you know. Oh, bless her. She'd been struggling to try and get anybody to do that job for her. So the fact that we turned up and did it, and the fact that we didn't charge her, she was almost trying to twist my arm to force me to take some money, but I insisted. I said no. So hopefully that's restored her faith in UK tradesmen a little bit now. Bless her, she wouldn't let me leave without giving me something, so I did accept some chocolates from my kids. They're great, aren't they, the old days? Anyway, that's it. That does more for me than what it's done for her, ultimately. You know, just being able to do it. And it's only because of this YouTube channel and you guys that I can actually do things like this more often. So, thank you to you guys.